unless something happens
Right.
between now and publishing.
Unless something occurs, but yes, between now and the public hearing is the actual publishing. Thank you, Dina. It is July 31st, last day of the month, 2020. The time is 9:01 a.m. Officially calling the meeting to order. Attending Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. So our one and only and very important action item is the review of the tentative balanced fiscal year 21 budget. And I'd like to start with our clerk, Jim Brannon. Take it away, please, Jim.
Good morning, everyone, and look at the number at the very bottom. It says 0. It means it's balanced. I want to commend the commissioners for their hard work in getting this done, and of course, Dina and Michelle with crunching the numbers all the way through. It was an easy budget year thus far, but we're not done yet. So with that, I turn it over to Dina.
Thank you, Jim. Go ahead, Dina.
Thanks, Jim. So this morning, we're going to go through the documents that you have before you. I also have them up on the screen for the good of the audience, and just in case, like me, you didn't bring your glasses, so they're easier to see on the screen. So the very colorful first document is the preliminary summary. That's something that you're familiar with. So we'll start there. So today, I don't anticipate us using the full 2 hours. What my plan is today is to just walk you through these documents, answer any questions that you might have, and then it's your meeting. So I'll just briefly walk through and stop me at any time if you have questions. So preliminary summary. This gives you an overall view of what this upcoming year's budget is going to do in the county. What our revenues are, property tax, non-property tax, fund balance that pays for our personnel, our operating, our very minimal capital this year, and some modest wage adjustments, and then of course the increase to medical. So pretty basic budget. I will note that at $98,989,569, you were more than $2 million less than last year's budget. Okay. A lot of that has to do with capital, but I will say that given how everything's changing from day to day in the world, this is pretty amazing, considering over a 12% growth rate in the county that you held it at 0. So I think every taxpayer would be pretty happy, because we went through this pretty deeply and made some pretty hard decisions and managed to get everybody something and still stay at 0. So kudos to you at echoing Jim's sentiments. So any questions here on any of these numbers?
I'm fine. Bill?
Okay.
Leslie?
All right. Moving on to the
Could
next.
you turn the music all the way down or mute it? It does drive me crazy.
That better?
Yeah. Hearing aids pick it up real quick.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this next document you've seen before as well, but I wanted to walk through it and kind of give you the backstory on how our taxes are calculated. So the first portion of the document here, and there's my cursor. So this upper portion, according to our statute, we look back 3 years to what our budgeted tax piece was for our budget. So last year, this $49,926,627, that was what we taxed last year. That was the portion of the budget that was property tax. So what we do for the next year's budget is we look back and we say, okay, of these 3 years, this is the biggest number. We multiply that by 3%, and that gives us what our 3% taxation limit is. So that's that number. Notice in our planned use, we haven't brought that over. We're taking 0.
Right.
So this next section, new growth calculation, as of the 22nd of July, and I want to thank Joanne Connor, our tax accountant, who worked feverishly with us up to the end of yesterday to make sure that we had all of these numbers dialed into the most accurate and most recent values and calculations. So this is our new growth number as of the 22nd. This is last year's levy rate. We use last year's levy rate. by the new growth to get our new growth number. That new growth number we are planning to use. So our total new taxing authority, if we were to take everything that was available to us in those two calculations, we would have 2885,984 at our disposal. Plus, the thing that will not be said,
The other taxing authority.
the other taxing authority that will not be named, and that's our total available money for this year's budget. Of those numbers, you went with this number. So anybody who says this board isn't conservative, these numbers say otherwise. So this negative number down here, this is property tax replacement, and this is mainly money that we get in other forms, so we back that off so that we're not double counting. That number fluctuates every year. It's about $400,000, and we do that as a way to not double count because we eventually get it back in other forms. A lot of it has to do with areas where the state gives us a percentage of tax collected on, or tax that can't be collected on property where there's no houses, like big swaths of land that have no development. So we get a piece of replacement for that. So that's what that number represents. So that's our net amount, maximum available taxing authority, given all of the new money, plus the old money, plus that not named money. So this is our planned use. So what our planned use is what we took last year, plus the new growth. And then we adjust for that property tax replacement. So that gives us our levy amount. Now, because we didn't take our 3%, right there, we add that to the number that will not be named, and now that's our new other taxing authority balance that will be brought forward. Now, the law changed, so now instead of that money directly going automatically into foregone, it has to be done through resolution. So in your packet, this is the resolution. I received this template from Seth Grigg this week. This is the most current, so I have updated this to represent Kootenai County. And down here in the resolution, you can see there's that amount that you didn't take in taxes, the 3%, and we'll be adding that to the foregone balance.
Okay.
So on the night of our public hearing, this will be part of your meeting besides your normal public hearing.
Right.
All right.
Dina, so for everyone's benefit, without getting too detailed, how is levy rate calculated?
So levy rate is arithmetic.
Right.
So the next document we're going to go to, I can explain that.
Okay.
Probably easier, because both of the numbers are sitting up here on the screen. So this is the levy sheet. The levy sheet illustrates the budget by fund, and it shows by each fund what the expenses are in the first column, and then all of these other columns are the ways that we pay for these expenses. So our net levy rate here is the result of our total taxes, and that's divided by our total new market value. So our latest market value, we grew by over 2 million, or 2 billion this year, 2 billion with a B, that's pretty amazing, divided by the total tax, and that gives us our levy rate. Notice how much lower it is than last year. So we're going down because those values are going up, and we'll illustrate that through infographics at the public hearing so that the public can see it visually, because I think it's easier to understand it visually, the dramatic drop in the levy rate over time. And because we took 0 this year, that has taken a precipitous drop. So just to walk through this part of it, you notice that each resulting levy rate by fund. This part isn't on your sheet, but I wanted to bring this to your attention. So over here, this maximum allowed rate, that's by statute. We cannot exceed that. So this shows by fund over here what our percentage of resulting levy rate is for 2021, how that stacks up against our maximum allowed rate by statute. So you can see of all of our funds that the Justice Fund is probably the one that's closest to the levy cap, but it's still comfortably under. In some years, that has gotten into the 90%, but it has dropped, thankfully. So from a statutory and levy max perspective, we're way below where we would be in trouble from a levy rate perspective. And notice too, a lot of these levy rates year over year have dropped. Now, I would note that this one looks skewed, and that's skewed because we consolidated the clerk's portion of district court and put it in the district court fund. It's still under the clerk, but it moved funds. So that big chunk that was sitting in the general fund is now in the district court fund. District court fund is still under its levy rate cap, but we felt that for reporting purposes, we wanted all the costs for district court because they are rising so rapidly so that we could reflect those costs in reporting more accurately. So, very quickly, this document, upper part, is all the levy funds. So, current expense includes Fund 10, Fund 11, Justice Fund, obviously, revaluation, that's the Assessor's Fund 46, Airport, Fair, Parks, Historical Society. The Indigent Fund, notice again, year over year, no taxes taken. They're completely paying for all of their operations here with fund balance and the rest of it with the income that they expect to receive. So that's a huge boon for the county to be able to do that. District Court, Health District, Noxious Weeds, Liability Insurance, Fund 13. So these are all the required levy funds that we have for required services. Excuse me. Down below, we have non-levy funds. So we report these with how they're supported. Notice that the property tax column is completely empty. That's because they're funded by everything other than property tax. So you can see their expenses here. You can see, I think is it interfund transfers? No. Let me see. Can't see it. Sorry. Okay, so this is fund balance here. Notice this big chunk here, fund balance, capital, basically. Capital's being funded there. And then smaller ones, court interlock. We do donate to the Centennial Trail, so that's funded that way. These are interfund transfers. So part of what we do for the budget is we have internal services. So for example, HR, treasurer, auditor provide services and help solid waste. So we're able to take a portion of their budget and bring revenue in. So solid waste pays for internal services with the other funds. So that helps to defray some of those tax burden. So we did a cost study, and so we're able to do that. This represents a transfer from the general fund for the county's portion of the Centennial Trail. So those are interfund transfers where we move money around through funds. The net effect, as you can see, is zero. It's just moving money from one pocket to another. This column is all the other revenues. Obviously, non-levy funds live on fees that they charge. So this is fees that they charge, money that they get from other sources, and then this is all the grant money. This grant money, we don't budget grants except for personnel. So any personnel that's paid by grants, a big portion of that is public defender, who has existing positions that are rolling forward. That's where that comes from. So again, from our uglier page before, this is a summary of that on this levy page. So we have last year's taxes, And then we have this year's taxes plus that replacement, then we back it out. Here are all the elements, the 3%, the new growth, the beginning foregone, the replacement, this total dollars available, which is the same number from the prior schedule, and then the new foregone balance. So then I'll just creep down here a few more spaces just to show you this part. So here's the total county budget. You recognize that number from the preliminary summary. Here's all the fund balance use, interfund transfers net to zero, and then all other revenues. As you can see this year, the fund balance and the other revenues, just a little bit under what our taxes are this year. The ambulance district has their own levy, so this much of the ambulance district is fees and this much is their property tax. And then for informational purposes, we show the medical internal service fund for our health care, but that's actually included as part of our general fund in our current expense. We just show it here for visibility purposes. So the total levy for the county, including our KCMS, is $54,252,477. That's all the property taxes for the county and for KCMS. I know that's a lot of information. Any questions on this?
Good job.
Well, I think it's numbers that you've seen before. We're just showing it in a different format. And we usually provide this to the taxpayers at the public hearing. So they may have questions on this, but this pretty much lays it out of what we're spending and how it's being paid for and how by each fund, what we're actually levying. And if that levy has gone down or up. And that's pretty impressive. This one's really impressive. And even if you net these two together, still, you've got very, very modest use of your general fund. You're only using 28.6% of your levy power in the general fund. That's pretty remarkable. And the fact that justice has dipped from in the 90s down to 78 is pretty impressive too. So I'm pretty happy with this budget. Just this is my fourth budget cycle, and I think it's been really smooth. And I think that the users who built these budgets have just been outstanding and really asking good questions and willing to embrace new technologies and new efficiencies. So we're really solid. We're on solid footing from a levy perspective.
Questions for Dina? Leslie? Bill?
No.
All right,
Good.
on to
I'm
the
sorry.
monster.
Clerk Brannon, please.
I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you a question. Do I need to be prepared for the maximum fair levy this year? We've calculated in the past, if we took everything that the fair could get, what would their number be?
So where is
So
that?
obviously,
We're only using 4% of the maximum levy for the fair.
we can calculate it.
We can have it in our back pocket.
We presented it.
Okay.
You know, I was asked point blank, well, what would it be? I said, it would be amazing if I had that number off the top of my head. So you're going to get people who are going to say, well, we could get more money for these things if we work up the ladder, like Justice Fund. Well, we could get more money if we go higher up. But I think it's imperative that we explain that it all is interacting together in making a budget.
Well, yeah, because it all goes towards that 3% max that we can
Correct.
take.
Right,
Yes,
so if you give from one, you have to take from another.
from another. So if you're saying that the fair, county fair is running at 4% of maximum, and if we went to 100% of maximum, that's.
They would
that's a
take
20
more than new growth.
That's a 25-fold increase.
Correct. But it's a question we've been asked before, not to pick on the fair, but the point is, the fact that Justice Fund over to the right has gone down, there are counties who are dipping into their fund balance to pay for their justice costs. There are counties that are dipping into fund balance to pay indigent costs. We are not there because we've done decent and sometimes great jobs with budgeting. So I just want to know, I mean, I want everyone to understand, yes, there's more money there if we go to the top of the levy rate, but wherever you get, it comes off of someone else.
That's exactly right.
All right.
So, but I guess the question that I have, as long as you raised it, is when I look at the county fair percentage, it's really substantially below most of the others, not all of the others, obviously, one is 0, we got another one at 1.1. Why is that? I don't know, maybe I should be asking myself, but,
I don't know why the max is so high.
yeah, that would be astronomical.
Well, I know, and that's, you know, when they talk about the county's support, everybody loves our fair, and everybody was disappointed that this year there was no fair. It's a valid question for them to ask,
Oh, yeah.
but that's why I want to know, as long as everybody understands that these are all interrelated.
Yeah, they are. I guess the question that I have, and I'm kind of asking it openly, is that if they're at 4% in a year where they've had to sacrifice revenue, particularly the fair itself, not to mention other events, why are we at 4%? And of course, they're planning a master plan, and I guess it's a facility study, the total of which is going to come out to about $80,000. Are we shortchanging them?
I would think that looking at just the levy rate by itself probably isn't a good measure.
Yeah, keep going.
Because the budget is dollar-driven.
Go ahead.
It's not percent-driven. Those maximums are statutory limits. Also consider how much foregone we have built up. If we were employing all of that in our budget, then proportionately, everybody would get a larger share anyway. But because we have a large foregone balance, and because the levy rate is just an arithmetic representation of value to budget, we really are dollar-driven. So the levy rate is just kind of a byproduct of our budget. So if you keep your budget low, your levy rate will be low as long as your property value goes
Right.
up.
High.
So there's more, the complexity is there. So it's hard to oversimplify it, but just saying, well, you're only at 4% of your levy rate. Well, that's good that you're managing your budget so well, but you don't want to get to the max of your levy rate.
Oh, no, clearly.
So you have to take all the funds in total. So obviously, we have to put most of our eggs in the justice basket.
And what's interesting is and I don't know if we can calculate this on the fly, but what would that amount to? What does the 4% amount to in terms of dollars?
That's what
I
he
was
was,
asked that 2 years ago, and I said, that would be amazing if I could do that in my head.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
wondering if we just take that,
And multiply it, or is that what
multiply
you,
it by our total levy.
which is what, the 51.3 mil?
No, that's not right. Equals that. $51.31. Oh, you're right.
When you say total valuation, you mean the 51 mil?
no, the 22 billion.
Oh, the 22 billion, okay, okay, yes. That's right, the 51 mil is the tax, right, total, yeah, you're right.
No, that can't be right. Oh. I'll have to look at it. There's a way to
No,
do it.
that would be astronomical.
Yeah. When we
4%
calculated it a
4% of
couple.
22
Yeah.
billion?
No, no,
You're
no,
like
no,
80
no.
billion bucks.
No, it would be the maximum levy rate. So point, yeah, 0.0001
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
times 22 billion is what the max
Right.
fair labor would be, but then it would probably be into foregone and all kinds of stuff, and we wouldn't be able to fund anything else.
The last time we looked at it, if,
Yeah, that's
if they
correct,
were to
yeah.
get their full share of the max levy rate, it basically would, like, take all the money that we had available to us in our levy limit. So, that's, I can bring that number forward, but I want to make sure I have it corrected.
22 billion times something, what is it, several zeros and then,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
Yep.
At least we know the methodology, okay.
Yeah, but it's the
you,
relationship
Nancy.
between value and tax, or
Yes.
value and budget.
Value and budget.
So that is the levy sheet.
Okay,
All right, so on to the monstrosity. That is the public hearing document. Okay. So this is the levy sheet at a more detailed level. By statute, up here I've got all the information and the statute quoted and all this. This is what we're going to publish in the paper. Now, what I'm going to say right now is, we're going to hold off until the last possible minute.
yes.
So, because there's so much changing at the state level, and we don't know about this tax rebate thing, that could affect the levy rate, it could affect these numbers in some way, and I really don't want to put it out there and then have to retract it. So the latest that I can publish this is the week of August 10th. So we've got our ear to the ground, and we're checking in periodically and seeing what's changing. So when I'm ready to publish, I'll let you know, and if you want to meet and talk about anything, we can, but I really want to hold off. I'm comfortable with these numbers, but I don't want to jump the gun because things are literally changing on an hour-by-hour basis. So by law, we have to show 2 years of actuals, last year's adopted budget, and then this proposed budget is basically all of our personnel costs, operating, capital. Let me see if I can do this. I should have brought my mouse. If I can split the screen here. View. I apologize here. Freeze paint so that you can see the column over here. Okay, here we go. Okay. So there's a lot going on this page, and we don't publish this piece of it, but this breaks it out by elected official, and then there's a chart down at the bottom I'll show you that we include in our budget packet. So from the point of view of current expense, which was that first line in the levy sheet, we call it current expense, Fund 10,
Yes.
11, all that. So this is broken down by personnel, operating, and capital. And when we get down to the bottom, you'll recognize the totals from the preliminary summary. So this all kind of fits together. They're all familiar numbers. Justice Fund by the different categories, except for the piece of the sheriff that's up in Fund 10, lives up in the current expense up above. So here's your personnel, operating, capital, total.
Dina, if you
Yeah.
can look at 44, T44, it's just formatted different. I don't know if that matters. No, you've just
Yeah, go up a
hit
little.
it. There you go, bottom line.
County Fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just formatted different. I don't know if that matters to you.
Yep, it does.
Okay.
It does, thank you. And again, we'll give it a final scrub for formatting too. Okay, so then these other funds,
And
Some of-
there's one more below, so.
okay, yep, no worries.
5,000.
Okay,
Couple more lines below.
okay,
They can see. There you go.
okay. All right. Thank you. See, it takes a village. So here's our funds. And again, personnel operating, this is all from the expense side. Oop, wow, that really jumped. So here's our total government funds. What happened there? There it is. So our total government funds. Then we have solid waste. So here's our solid waste personnel, operating, capital, total. And there's that total budget number again. So that's all the government funds plus solid waste. We're showing this, the medical, but that's up in the general fund. And then KCMS. And then down here on the bottom, we've got some footnotes for where funds have moved around, just for the reader. Here's the healthcare summary. This is that total healthcare, and then we break it out by employers portion and employees portion to give the reader of the newspaper an idea of where those costs lie. We also show from the ambulance district how much of it's tax and how much of it's revenue. And then over here is just a high-level summary of the piece that's property tax, fund balance use, other revenue, which is everything else, and then the small part that's grants that are attached to people. And then that's our total budget number that we see over here and that we also see on the levy sheet. So once we have this formatted in a beautiful way and we don't hear of anything or of whatever changes by the 10th of August, then we'll publish. This portion does not get published, but this is where we get the data for this, for the public hearing document. So this shows by elected official the pieces of the budget. So let's see if I can make this a little smaller so that you can see. My apologies on sizing here. So BOCC, biggest portion, but a lot of that has to do with solid waste. You've got solid
Oh, you
waste in
roll
there.
solid.
So that inflates your piece. Prosecutor, sheriff. Sheriff's the next biggest piece, then clerk, and so on. But that's by elected official. So we'll show that pictorially as well as just in statistical fashion at the public budget hearing. So, any questions on this? I know it's a lot of numbers, but again, they are familiar numbers that you've been seeing all along.
Not at all.
Okay, so then the last piece, and then everybody is free, and actually I already showed it to you, was the resolution for foregone. So that will be part of the public hearing.
public
So
hearing,
you'll have to do the resolution process for that piece of it. And I think the resolution for the budget actually happens after the hearing in a business meeting. And then we just bring it to you in a very small form. So I would just need, if there isn't any more questions, or if you wanted to open it up to the floor, I just need a vote that you tentatively accept this so that we can publish, barring any major changes from the state.
So why don't we open it up for questions before we take a formal vote? In fact, I'll call it public comment. Anyone on?
Hi, who's on the line? Who's called in?
Yeah, come up.
Remain shy.
Yeah, Art, come up to the podium, please. Yeah.
Just a question, where is community?
Okay,
Art
one second.
Collins.
Hold, whoa. Yeah, there you go. Name and address. Go ahead, Art.
Art Collins, 1214 Glenmore Court, Hayden, Idaho.
You started to ask, where's community development?
Yeah, in the budget,
yeah, it
because
rolls
I
in under
saw
BOCC.
a lot of the staff, but I'm trying to, like Dave Callahan, his budget, that whole area of community, where is it?
Okay, that falls in under BOCC. If we
Oh,
go
it's
back,
under the
yeah, if we go back, oh, yes, if you go back to Dina's.
We go
pie chart,
back to,
it's not a separate line item, Art?
Oh, it's not.
No. No, they fall in under us.
Oh,
Now, they're paid for by levy funds, from the taxation, but they fall in, they're one of the, is it 15 departments roughly that we have?
Yeah, they don't have a separate levy, it's just under the general fund levy.
They're in that current expense line.
They're actually not,
They're not their own
mandated
yeah.
yeah, they're not a mandated service, so there's no levy fund for them.
Are they under the current expense?
Yes.
That's where they are? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
They usually are fee-based, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, so a
lot of it
lot
is,
of,
yes.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of
Not
that
entirely,
pays
though,
for that.
but-
Not entirely, but more than most.
But more, okay. I'm sorry, Charlotte, you want to come up, please?
Charlotte Wilson, Extension Educator, Kootenai County Extension Office. Historically, at this point, we've been able to see what our budget, I know it's under your BOCC funds. Is there any way for us to know what that budget item would be right now for no other reason for me to be able to plan for the coming year?
I think
The
from,
budget ask was accepted as asked.
yeah, which I believe was 156,075.
Very good, thank
That's
you.
what's
There
in
were no
there.
changes to it.
Sean, please?
Just a couple things to come to mind, and I don't know that we've talked about them much, pardon me, but the RFQ is ready to go out for the building. Dave Ferguson and I had some back and forth, and it's ready to go. So Dina, do you know in the fund balance if there's any for the new building?
Well, there's
Is it-
fund balance in this year's budget of 5 million.
And
So we're gonna roll that over.
I was just,
Yes.
yes.
Because what I was thinking was if we have, let's just say it's, I don't know this for sure, but let's just say for conversation, it's a $15 million building. That's gonna put us at about 1.5 for architecture.
Architect.
Somewhere right in there, you know, it's a big project, so we might get away with 1.2. We're gonna have a selection made by the end of October.
For architect,
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, in theory, we could start design in the spring, and we would only end up paying a couple $100,000 out of that before the next budget cycle.
Right.
And then we would know what it's gonna cost. So I just wanted to make sure that we had something in there, so that we're moving, because it's gonna take a year to design it, so he's not gonna get, he or she, the firm is not gonna get the money up front.
Right.
So we would just put out a little bit at a time as they go along, but it'll still allow us to keep moving forward in that 3-year window that we've talked about.
Right. I just want to make sure, two other things that, now that you bring that up, Sean, is that we can't really call, when we have our amended budget, that's going to roll back in. So technically, it looks like, oh, we went down, $3 million. But that's kind of a, I don't want to say sneaky way to say it, but our amended budget is going to be higher than last year's because of that capital rollover.
Correct,
So.
but that levy happened the prior year.
Yes, exactly. And our levy rate did go down, and that's absolutely
Right.
great to,
So
yeah.
for general consumption, that's correct. We're not taxing for that in fiscal year '21.
Right, it was paid for in fiscal year
Right.
2020, and because it's an ongoing project by law, we can roll
Yeah.
those monies over to
Right.
complete an
Right.
in-process
Yeah.
project.
Then the other question I had was, did you decide what you wanted to do with the land at the Armory?
I think the answer is we haven't yet. Yeah.
I hadn't heard any more, and I know that was a budget thing about Steven saying you could just move his money.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
haven't.
we haven't done that yet.
Fair question, though. We need to
Yeah,
address
I
it.
just wanted to make sure that it was still on the radar,
Oh,
because
yeah.
it could affect what you do at the end of August.
How can we help but have it on the radar? Never mind.
Always on the
It's always on the
All right,
radar.
that's all I
Okay.
had. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions? None?
Wow.
Leslie? Bill? Nancy? Okay, then. I think we can move toward a motion regarding the budget as presented by our Finance Director, Dina Darrow, which includes a 0% tax increase, and we can indicate the total budget for the year, for fiscal year '21, which would be, I want to make sure I'm using the right figures here, 98,973,120.
Right there. 98, 989,
569, okay.
Yeah, so. Okay, so I'll just reiterate, since I'm sure everybody's forgotten, I am not for raises during this tumultuous year with people have lost their businesses and savings and livelihoods and all that. But I will go ahead and move that the budget be brought forth to be published.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Phillips.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Tentative approval of the budget, final approval, of course, is at the public hearing, so we will proceed, barring any changes, to publish. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for your cooperation this year, making it as easy as it was. Probably the easiest, perhaps, we've ever had. Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Time is now 9:42, meeting adjourned.